Welcome to the SowGrow Marketing Council. This is a group of expert marketers, and we get together once a month to share tips and strategies so that we can all stay up to speed in what's happening in multiple different areas of marketing. As marketers, a lot of our disciplines cross and we touch different areas of marketing. And so it's really helpful to know what's going on in different areas of marketing and not just swim in our little marketing lane. So excited to hear from you guys today. And we are going to have April kick us off today. So, April, would you like to introduce yourself and kick us off?
Yes. Hello. Hi. My name is April. I'm a AI creative technologist, product marketer, and also audience insights and enablement, aficionado, if you will. I'm really, really into fandoms and what makes people tick. And so today I'm going to be sharing, a quick tip on 5 slides on this ongoing kind of topic that I've been talking about in the last couple of well, no, just started last podcast on audience insights for AI generative video or generative AI content. Last week or last month, I guess, last time, I was able to break down preferences based on um, um, age demographics or, age groups, if you will, and their preferences. And that was very interesting because it was like very focusing on very specific aspects of AI that different groups hate and prefer and stuff like that. And so, in the same kind of vein, today I'm going to be, kind of discussing a little bit of how, the differences break down by gender. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. So, okay, let me share my presentation here. Um, okay, so I'm going to be sharing that, and then you can see it, right? Okay. All right. As you all can imagine, when it comes to generative AI, there's also very specific differences that come up, by the gender demographic, which sounds obvious, but like in this age of like bubble algorithms, it's even more clear that there's a cultural drift that male and female audiences are increasingly growing apart and they don't share the same cultural references or emotional touchdowns because of it, because of algorithmic bubbles preferences. And so in the world of AI generative video, it's kind of the same case, although there's a lot of opportunity there. Uh, um, to grow. But like as of right now, it's predominant very male gaze in the sense of the men are 35% more likely to watch AI generative content. And 65% of AI generated content it's geared towards male audiences. In that the typical AI enthusiast archetype is a young male and very tech focused. And so like a lot of those kind of videos that you find out there, skew very male centric with very male centric interests and aesthetics. Specifically when it comes to genre categories that historically have been higher in male viewership, including sci-fi, cyberpunk, high fantasy, gore, action, horror, that type of stuff. Um, and so, meanwhile, the female audiences, very, very different. Like, first of all, they're behind in adoption because inherent suspicion, there's like a little bit more apprehension. Women are 15% more likely than men to believe that there's risks involved that outweigh the benefits of AI. And so, like, yeah, when it comes to those demos is clear that, men are very like gung-ho, like, yeah, let's go. And then women are like, let's think about this. Let's pause. Let's like, what is really here for me? And in addition, then you have to consider that women are the primary target of, deep fakes, privacy laws. There's just a lot of distrust in terms of, any content that is synthetic, with synthetic humanoids. Like, there's more likely that they're gonna see it as a little bit of a slop, because they struggle with the uncanny valley traces, like lack of emotional tone and stuff like that. Um, so, um, so I'm very interested in, how can, women can be won over. And it's become more and more apparent that it's definitely through storytelling. Um, uh, to the point where they're more forgiven of less than perfect AI generated video content execution as long as it delivers on good stories that prefer world building, emotional journeys, dramatic hooks. And you see this in successful case studies of the micro dramas. They continue to rise. Um, in like the creative content economy. You see it more and more in multiple different kind of formats, different kind of genres, and all that stuff. And I can just see that because of that, it's just gonna, genres are gonna explode here in the future. I can even see more of like nonfiction, kind of like reality TV type AI generative video content be put out there and become popular. So it's just really, I think there's a lot of, kind of like explosion in that arena coming up in the next, future, like very short future here in within the next year and so on. However, the very key thing to remember is that it's very hyper niche. Like when you look at fandom, under this kind of like context, you can't look at that mainstream in terms of like, when you come to like strategy for those type of audiences, because they do live in micro niche communities online, and so you have to consider how did they break down, like, they're gonna be very into different aesthetics, different tropes, different subgenres, and content types. So you have to consider where they live in order to then consider how to cater for them. Here in this slide, I just break down a little bit on like how, like, for example, under romantasy, there's like a vast, umbrella, uh, kind of like of sub niche tropes under that. And then you have to consider the fan fiction what if scenarios and all the different iterations depending on whether it's like, cottagecore, hyper fantasy, a whimsy goth, and then and stuff like that. So yeah, so this is sort of like just a little bit of like an insight on what is happening in that world. It's changing a lot. And very fast, as you can all imagine. AI goes really fast. But yeah, I think that the the tools and the the technology is getting to sync construction faster, so we're gonna see more kind of like episodic stuff, because now you can get to those videos quicker. Before it was a little bit of like, it will take a lot of effort. Now it's becoming a little bit easier. So anyway, yeah, I'm gonna stop sharing here, and that's my tip. Any questions?
So interesting, April, and thank you. It was so interesting to talk about the age groups last time and the differences there. And so to bring it into the differences with gender, that's really, really interesting. And it has a lot of implication even for like advertising and all kinds of things. So Dan, you have
Yes.
a thought or question?
And I could ask 10. That's so good.
I know,
Um,
right?
yeah, part of what we do with helping people be on videos deal with their insecurities and the things they're thinking and the things they don't tell the public. And it's kind of cool through fandom as a lens, people tend to, give up a little bit more of what they like and who they are because there's either others around that still like it, or, you say, oh, it's a guilty pleasure and you can pass it off and enjoy it a little bit. So one of the things, I got two questions if I can, but the first one is when you're thinking about fandom as a lens, and you're looking at these different demographics, are you finding patterns, things that even though we don't love stereotypes, maybe you can see things are the way you thought? And that leads into my second question, which is kind of the opposite end of that.
Okay. Um, so like it's interesting to me because I think what people really love are those archetypes. Like I think that what they like to enjoy, it's a little bit of like, give them like the safety of the archetype and then kind of like surprise them with the archetype, kind of like not reversal, but kind of like um yeah, when you flip the script on that, that's kind of like what they enjoy. So yeah, I think that yeah, people have to just think about it in that way. How you can like pull that off.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I love that kind of insight as well. And then the second, if I can pile it on.
Sure.
So oftentimes, especially when I'm in public, but oftentimes I have conversations with women who are like, oh, and it's so easy for guys because we got to put on makeup and do our hair and care about what we wear, which is 1000% true. And then I'm like, hey, you want a little insight? I've actually done over 100 private consultations over the last 6 years with men, teaching them how to put on makeup and how to feel better on camera. So it's out there. It's just they're not screaming it from the hilltops.
Right.
So have you found that's generally surprising when I share that information with someone? Have you found anything surprising in this kind of journey? Like, whoa, I did not expect that.
Um, when it comes to gender, not really in the sense of like surprising because like yeah, I knew it was gonna skew more male. Um, but yeah, like when it came to like age last on the last podcast, I don't know if you were around for that one. I was surprised to learn that, for example, the demos that are kind of like young Gen X elder millennials, because they grew up, in the 90s with analog, they really feel uncomfortable with the uncanny valley and they really want to see like realistic, high definition, very high cinema, high fidelity kind of stuff. And they're uncomfortable with everything else, like they just label it slop. But then like the closer you go to like, young Gen Z and elder alphas, like they actually love and prefer the surrealism of the synthetic aesthetic of AI, and they don't think the word slop is something derogatory. They find it funny and they find enjoyment in making fun of it. Like that's actually part of the entertainment itself. So yeah, so what I just think is like, as marketers, we need to think about how audiences are changing because I think that that's really gonna drive, how strategies are put forward in terms of like, what works and what doesn't work and what used to be a good strategy, back in the day, like it might be not as great for depending on your audience, especially if it skews younger for B2C. Now, like, I know a lot of people here in the group are very B2B, but I think that there's, some parallels to consider, and that's why, I bring these topics up so that, you guys all stay up to date with that.
That's awesome. Very cool, April. All right. We're going to move on to Susan so we can get everybody's tips in today, but that was a great tip. Thank you. I hope you have one again for us as a follow-up next month because this has been a good series. I love it. You can even put them together as, like a whole series because it's been really helpful. All right,
Sure.
Susan, can you please
Thank
introduce
you.
yourself and share your tip?
Hi, everybody. I'm Susan Gold. My company is Susan Gold Coaching. And as you can see, I'm a marketing strategy coach. Today, I'm going to talk about one of our maybe not so favorite topics, which is pricing. right? It's always a challenge to price our business. So one of the first questions I want you to think about is, can your market see what makes you worth the investment? Think about it from an outsider's perspective, right? So here's the uncomfortable truth. Fair market, value-based pricing for excellent work requires a market that understands what excellent really means, right? And how they define it, not necessarily how we define it. And I see this constantly working with professional services firms doing excellent work, but struggling to price appropriately because their prospects don't understand the difference between good and great in their category. So you can't get paid for value in a market where buyers who think everyone roughly offers the same thing. And most professional services markets, that's very true, whether we like it or not, right? They're completely undifferentiated in our buyers' minds. We're all marketers. We all do something different. We understand, where there's strategy and where there's execution, but a lot of clients, especially in the 5 to 10 million and below, really have no understanding of how different we all are. So the harsh reality is the prospects aren't comparing us really against competitors on quality or outcomes. They're putting us in the same bucket and picking on based on price, on proximity, on whoever calls back first, right? Have you ever heard that as a why I'm doing business with you, right? But this really isn't a pricing problem. It's a positioning problem. So getting pricing right isn't about charging more necessarily, although I do think that a lot of professional services are undercharging. It's about creating alignment between what you deliver and what your clients value and making that visible before the pricing conversation even begins. That's the secret. So, three positioning questions that you can ask yourself of your company, right? Can prospects articulate what makes you different in one sentence? So test this out. Ask a recent client what they tell others about why they chose you. If they struggle to explain it, your differentiation isn't clear enough, even if they're experiencing you currently. I find that that can be the case, right? So we have to work on that constantly. Are you positioning against a problem or against a competitor? So problem-based positioning, so that pain, impact, value, message platform that I work with clients on. When you work on the problem-based positioning, it creates value-based conversations. Competitor positioning triggers that price shopping, which we want to avoid. So when you look at your website, think about what you're doing. If you're problem-based messaging or your competitive based positioning is what's happening. Even your LinkedIn content and your sales conversations, right? How are you talking about yourself long before the questions occur about pricing? And then do your materials, your sales flyers, the things that you send, the talks that you do your materials show prospects what excellent outcomes look like? Or do they assume that they already know the difference? Because they really don't. Most buyers in professional service markets have never experienced truly excellent work in your category. How many times have you had to pick up the pieces because the new client that you just took on is aggravated because their prior service provider dropped the ball, right? We all run into that. They literally don't know what they don't know. So the firms that get fairly compensated won't be the best at what they do. They'll be the ones who've made it clear why that matters before anybody asks about price.
Susan, that is so good. I think that that's so important. And I feel like that conversation doesn't often happen when key messaging takes place. Like when you're working on your key messaging, the pricing just it seems like it's in this other bucket, which you guys, when we all went to college, wasn't it, the 4 Ps?
Yes.
Pricing, like pricing, what was it? Pricing, product, all the 4 Ps. And so it's like, yeah, that's so good. Thank you for bringing this up. Billy, you had a
Sure.
thought or question? Billy, yeah.
Yeah, I gotta remember to unmute. Yeah, I just wanted to thank Susan. I mentioned how long I'd been in business in my introduction, and Susan, that was just such a clear way to frame it, that I wanted to thank you for that. Um, they say never quit learning, and I just some of those things you kind of know, just from experience or from instinct or whatever it might be, but to hear a professional like you reframe it. It's as relevant a message on pricing as I've heard in a long time.
Thank you. That's very nice of you to say that. I think, we're all smart people. We can keep things complicated, right?
Yeah.
That's probably where we're comfortable. But when we take a complex subject and keep it simple and straightforward, then not only do we have impact, and I appreciate you, all your compliments, but I think it's more challenging to make things simpler and straightforward. And that's also the key to really good messaging. Once you've got good messaging down and those pain points that your ideal clients have, then you're on your way, right? And it's amazing to me, after 4 decades in marketing, how many marketers do not start with pain points?
Yeah. Well, it's also timely, even to April's presentation. Just I've if you've been in the business as long as I have, it sounds like, and we've been through so many different disruptions or changes, evolutions in marketing, from the technology available to the whatever it might be. And I'm going to speak to something relevant to that myself, but uh, the with AI, I mean, that's disrupted pricing and
Yes.
expectations and perceptions in a very big way, and what it costs and what's good work versus uh, mediocre work, what's the potential of AI, how do you use it to an advantage, and how it affects pricing. So
Yes.
real
How
time.
that changes your value too, right?
Yeah.
Because just because you might be saving time, become more efficient, your margin goes up, that's good for your business. The unsophisticated buyer of your services will assume that you'll drop your pricing, right? You'll be more affordable because you're more efficient. But how does your value change because of AI? What can you explore that you couldn't before? Like multidimensional analysis of numbers or whatever it is in your business, right? So we're always reworking our messaging and aligning directly. Dan, did you have a question?
I just wanted to offer up I'm kind of current proof of what you're talking about, and I've been at this a long time, and you still have to remind yourself of some of these things and some of these insights. And recently, someone signed on with our monthly subscription for editing, and we were the top priced thing that they were looking at. They're very open about that. And then they came back and they're like, dude, you just kept talking about like handoff and simplicity and lack of friction. And those things kept ringing in my mind. It wasn't about like trend and fanciness of edit and all that. You said things like brand integration and making sure all our videos look like they belong to us. And pointing out those pain points really does work. So just want to say brava, because these things are true.
You're living the reality. Thanks, Dan.
Such a good tip. I feel like there are some follow-up tips that you could continue and dig deeper in this because it's such a good topic. Beautiful. Thank you, Susan. We appreciate it. Billy, would you like to introduce yourself and share your tip? And then we'll go to Sherry. All right, let me get you off of mute
Right.
here. All
Can you
right,
hear
you
me?
there, Billy?
Yes, I
All
am.
right, we're all
Thank
set.
you. How impressive. My name is Billy Mitchell. I'm with Stout Creative, and our motto is "We make ideas work." And the origin of that motto, and I like to say it's more than our motto, it's our mission. They're not necessarily our ideas. The projects we work on, we know a good idea when we see or hear it, and anyone that's got the wherewithal to hire us has a history of good ideas to have built the business that they have in place. And so we always want to look for what ideas may already exist that might need to be rethought, reimagined, reworked, uh, updated. And then we ask a lot of questions. And another another saying I say all the time is that great questions lead to great ideas. And so with that, my topic today, I think maybe a little relevant to both the previous topics, but it's uh, as we're all looking forward and looking around and trying to keep up with all things AI and all the changes, constant changes in our business, uh, my topic might seem a little out of place, but I think it actually, I want to share my screen if that's all right. Y'all tell me if you can see my screen. Okay, the topic is nostalgia, and I think it's a timeless topic because no matter what age, there's a lot of different ages on this call right now, and whether well, we do a lot of business to business marketing. So the three generations that we are most often speaking to are baby boomers, Gen X, and millennials, because at this point, even millennials are reaching decision-making positions within companies, and they're and then I have those different generations working for me too. So all of us, no matter how old we are, have nostalgia about times past, our everything from our childhood to school to what are some others? Just music, fashion, jobs, movies, television, technology, games, the industry we work in, jobs we've held, fashion. All of those things are notes on things to be nostalgic about. So it's no accident that even today there's plenty of um, music from any era that's played that people can immediately be drawn to. Um, it's an emotional shortcut to trust. And the reason I have this slide up here, I thought about the irony of this. Some of you on the call may not even remember the Mad Men show. And the Mad Men show debuted, I think, in 2007. It was about the advertising industry back in the late 1960s. I wasn't even in elementary school, but I loved Mad Men because for some reason I was nostalgic about the origins of the business I'm in and old movies that were about those Mad Men days and articles I read in Advertising Age when I was getting started. So even though it preceded my life, I have a nostalgic for historic items. Behind me, you'll see a collection. I collect advertising memorabilia and collectibles from long before I was born in many cases, and going all the way up into the 60s, the 70s. And in the 80s, I'm not quite as enthusiastic about it because that begins my work at that point in my era. So it's the times that preceded me I can be nostalgic about. I can be nostalgic about World War II. I wasn't alive then, but the dads of all my friends were World War II veterans. So every era, even today, is loaded with opportunities for using nostalgia and opportunities for emotional connection, even in business to business. And I'll talk a little bit about that. But emotional shortcuts to trust. People are more likely to engage with brands that remind them of positive memories, familiar experiences, or meaningful life moments. Nostalgia lowers skepticism and increases emotional receptivity because the audience already feels a connection before the sales message even begins. And to April's point, it could be something we all disliked, the schoolyard bully. I mean, the whatever it might be, it doesn't have to be warm and fuzzy. Uh, Through nostalgia, brands become more than products. The strongest nostalgic brands are woven into personal stories, childhood, family traditions, milestones, hobbies, or cultural moments. When a brand becomes part of someone's identity or memories, loyalty becomes far more durable than price or convenience alone. Now we come around to Susan's topic. So as those two were presenting, I was thinking, this nostalgia thing isn't going to be out of place. But so anyway, I'm going to give a real world example. One of my favorite accounts that we work with right now is a company called Gwillows. And Gwillows is a manufacturer that's been an American-based manufacturer for 100 years. And not many companies are around that can say that, but they still operate out of Wakefield, Massachusetts. They build those classic balsa wood gliders and rubber band planes that you see in the Ace Hardware store. And they also build all kinds of really elaborate and challenging to build scale models from World War One and World War Two and private aviation and commercial aviation. And the founder of the company, we are definitely applying nostalgia to this campaign and this client, but it's a mixed bag because we have to also project a company that's prepared for the future. And so to take a company's heritage and help that make their brand more relevant through the magic of nostalgia, and like Don Draper gave in his presentation about the carousel to the Kodak people, he talked about nostalgia is delicate but potent. And they were all crying by the time he got done showing the slides in the carousel. And some of you on the call remember that when your neighbors would come back from vacation and turn the lights off and you'd watch those slideshows and hear that click. That resonates with people my age, but not with someone who, grew up with, cable TV and Netflix and 1,000 stations and all that type of thing. But Heritage brands can reconnect older audiences while simultaneously introducing younger consumers to a story, lifestyle, or aesthetic they never personally experienced. Done well, nostalgia can become both preservation and discovery. And we're applying that to the content we're developing and the messaging as we're celebrating Gwillo's 100th anniversary this year. Uh, and it's just been a pleasure to apply that nostalgic aspect to their marketing and messaging. Powerful during uncertainty. If ever we lived in an uncertain time, it's right now with where will AI take us? How do we all, I like to say that every time I'm uncomfortable with change or disruptive periods, that we're in a never quit learning business. It's a never quit learning world. And there's no downside to that, really, when you think about it. We'd all like to get comfortable. And I've experienced it with employees that feel like I went to school, I've got my degree, you hired me to do this. The learning, it's just not what I don't want to keep up. And that's a cultural thing that I had to manage around and try to somehow light a spark that no, it's never going to stop. And here we are in another, maybe the biggest disruption of all. So nostalgia is also a comfort zone. In the midst of all this change, we faced change before. When we wrote the history of our 40th anniversary for the agency, I went back to how we started back in what seems like ancient times, 1984 in the first Apple commercial. And it's George Orwell, it's everything. There was no accident. I mean, it was huge coincidences or serendipitous to their marketing message of Apple. But uh, anyway, the changes have been constant since 1984, since we started. Uh, you got to balance heritage with relevance. And so where are we going now? That's where we've been. That's how we got here. Where are we going now? Um, and in Don Draper's presentation, back to my opening slide right here, I don't know did any of you see that episode or watch that series by any chance? Okay. I was like the guys from Kodak. It almost brought me to tears because it was so relevant. But he even went back to the Greek root words of nostalgia and explained what that meant. But that he described it as I'm no Don Draper, by the way, obviously, but delicate but potent, calling it a twinge in your heart, far more powerful than memory alone. And he gave the name of the Kodak projector, the carousel, a time machine that takes us back to a place where we know we are loved. And I mean, the tears were flowing from all these executives in their suits. Uh, and it just was, to me, it was a visceral demonstration of how he tapped in. Even the name carousel, because those slides went around with that click and a hum, and they rose up and they went down. And so the carousel name was beautiful. And I think it's obviously it was totally fictitious for that particular episode, but there is a true story about that particular branding. And a lot of the episodes of Mad Men had that. And um, so anyway, that's my tip is on nostalgia. And you could have an audience of Gen Xers, and there's a whole time period there of all the change they went through, their music, their entertainment, their all of their types of things. You can go into an industry's history and show how things used to be done, whether it was sharing a problem that got solved or just how it's always been adaptive. And so anyway, my big tip is nostalgia, uh, delicate but potent.
That's so good, Billy. I feel like it's so like you're talking about the idea of like the emotion already being there because anything that's nostalgic, people immediately already have emotion there. That's so powerful because it's usually a positive emotion for that. So that's so powerful. All right, I'm seeing questions fly in. I think you sparked something, so we'll try to get to as many as we can. Susan, got yours first?
Yeah, thank you. That was amazing. Not only did I lived in Wakefield, Massachusetts. What a strange coincidence that is. But you and your company are living one of my favorite sayings, which is people may not remember what you say, but they will always remember how you make them feel.
Hmm.
And nostalgia is interesting because no matter what age group, they all feel. I mean, think about memes. Memes have become nostalgic now, right? My son is 31. My daughter is 42. I have grandchildren that are 17 and 15 and 2 months old. We'll leave the 2 month old aside, but At every age, I see them wanting to tell the stories over and over and over again about what happened in the family. That never changes, no matter what else changes around us. Thank you so much for sharing that, Billy.
Awesome. April, you have a thought or question?
Yes, I just wanted to tell Billy, oh my God, he's so in the money. And as Susan was saying, even younger generations. So it's very interesting. Gen Z, especially younger Gen Z, it's very kind of like there's very little representation of their demographic in media compared to the demos of older generations. There are very little amount of shows, in terms of like, in that age, like showcasing the things that they're going through. Every time I talk to a Gen Zer, they just don't see themselves represented that much in traditional media right now. And what they tend to do is that they love to binge watch uh, older nostalgia shows because they see themselves a little bit more in in Friends, in like Gilmore Girls, in all of those like Michael in the Middle, all those all comfort shows, um, those dynamics, the family dynamics, the friend dynamics, and kind of like they love like um, fantasizing about what is it like living in an analog world that they don't really got to necessarily experience in the same way. And they binge watch this. It just so happens that for the most part, vertically in TikTok. But that's how they're doing it.
Yeah.
But they still yearn for that nostalgia, that feel of comfort, in those same things that all generations, as Susan was saying, yearn for. So, and so much more, even so, they're starting to really yearn for the not only analog but the more experiential aspects of that kind of lifestyle. They're now like they're going to malls, like they're going to the movies, they're going out there, and that is changing, kind of like where we're at just a few years ago, where like, nobody was going and acting this way. So it's very interesting. I mean, of course, they still also live in games for the most part, but it's very interesting. Like Gen Z is the biggest kind of like coming back to that right now. So yeah, very, very on top, very important topic
That's so
to
good.
pay
I feel like
attention
you could do
to.
a whole presentation and really dig deep into this, Billy. It's so good. Dan,
Thank
you
you.
had a thought, and then we will go to Sherry's tip.
Yeah, it just reminds me of how over the last like 3 or 4 weeks I've watched this whole like Pizza Hut rollback thing that's going on. They're changing all their interiors, not the whole company, but many, many locations to the old sit down buffet red cups. And it made me think, listening to this and how nostalgia can touch you, why companies change in the first place. I know everyone's always trying to advance and change and move with the times, but oftentimes they do stuff like that, and the whole community is like, why'd you change it? We loved it. And then all this time later, they're tapping into people who still went there and have money and are like, cool, thank you. It took you 30 years, but whatever. So it's kind of interesting how nostalgia comes into play even when we first lose something.
So funny, Dan. As soon as you said Pizza Hut, the first thing in my head was red cups. That's just hilarious to me that you hit that. Because I'm sure everybody we all had the red cups and then you said it. So that tells you how powerful it is, right? That's amazing. I love it, Billy. Thank you so much. That was a great tip. Sherry, would you like to share and introduce yourself?
Sure. Sherry Wheat here. And yeah, let's see. Sherry Wheat with telesales. We've been on the phone for 28 years. And the other day, I was driving home listening to Here and Now, and there was an interview with Valerie Pfeiffer, who's an assistant professor of psychology and counseling at the University of Missouri. And she's author of a book called Slipping into Silence, and also a study that was done between 2005 and 2019. And what they have, she and her author partner have discovered is that we have been speaking 338 fewer words every day, every year. And this has been going on for at least 15 years. And this study is only up until 2019. So, as someone who talks and who has a business talking on the phone, this was very interesting to me because this is not only a statistic, it's a shift in how we connect, how we influence, and how we sell. Instead, texting, emailing, social media is replacing conversations and face-to-face contact. And for younger adults, this number may be higher than older adults. At the same time, we're hearing about an increase in depression, anxiety, and loneliness. So when we speak less, trust may take longer to build, conversations may feel less natural, engagement becomes more passive, decision-making may slow down. So the question I have in my mind as I listened to this was, how may this be impacting business? If we're overwhelmed with text, email, scrolling, but not engaging verbally. Marketing is becoming louder while people are becoming quieter. We may actually be becoming underconnected. If more people are talking less, is that also a growing opportunity for leaders and brands to create more conversation? If people are having fewer conversations, do they value the ones that they're having more? I have a sister who's amazing. She is quite a few years older, and I refer to her as a miracle maker. I call her the Merry Magician. She attracts new friends every day that consistently provide a multiple of solutions for her and her community. And I don't know any other person with this level of success and connection. And I've started to use some of her techniques. One of the ways that she finds to say hello is so inviting, and it's based on the tone of voice that she uses. Then she connects. And then her best statement of all after being in connection with somebody is, "Oh, you just made my day." So my question to myself is, are we adding to the market noise or initiating prospect conversations that have a lasting impact? Valeria Pfeiffer, author of Sliding into Silence, has started to challenge herself to grow her number of words and conversations daily. And so some of the recommendations I have based on my listening also to her is to stop hiding behind digital only outreach. Your prospects are drowning in it. Ask better, more interested questions. Curiosity might contribute to competitive advantages, and reintroduce the human voice and live dialogue. So that, if you're interested in differentiation, getting on the phones, speaking to people, every call represents a business's brand, reputation, and marketing position. So that is my tip for today.
And you guys are just bringing it today. I feel like we could sit and talk about these topics so much. I feel like this is such a good thing. And it's so interesting thinking in terms of like people are starving for that. And as marketers, we're always looking for something that's going to benefit people. Like we're always looking for something that's going to help them. And even just having a conversation with someone, like a human conversation, can be beneficial for their mental health. It can be beneficial for their, attitude that day, whatever it is. So like all of a sudden marketing can become like really helpful in just like helping human beings. And I think that's such a neat thing. So, all right, I'm seeing the hands flying. All right, hang on. Who was first? Was it Dan? I think you were first. Was it Billy? All right, I'm not sure who was first.
It was
April,
April.
was it you? Because it doesn't show me. It just says
Yeah.
like two. Okay, so April, you go.
I'll go first. So I think this is fascinating because yeah, it's you can see the change demographically. For example, right now, Gen Z, okay, so that just so that people remember, the eldest Gen Z right now is like around 28, 29 years old. They're like about to hit the 30s. They're like older now. And so it's very interesting to me that they're still kind of like struggling with, not be able to processing stuff like all the older generations know how to do it without because they did experience growing up analog. they still, regardless of how old they're getting, they're still like, very struggling with communicating. Um, and not feeling like, oh, awkwardness, or like I'm afraid of being cringe, or like the latest that I've heard is that they prefer doing FaceTime, but they don't necessarily like to have their faces in the call, just like have the call looking at the ceiling, because they're afraid of clipping, which is kind of like screenshotting their friends screenshotting them in a way that they don't feel comfortable with. And then, that lives somewhere and they don't have control over that or something like that. And now with AI, of course, it's like critical thinking, it's really affecting also that ability to, be more fluent and like, engage in that like neuroplasticity, that it's required when you actually engage in full on. So absolutely, there is definitely a struggle as younger and younger, like the more native you get, which is essentially, teens and preteens. They're like the AI natives now. And yeah, that's definitely gonna be a struggle. So yeah, this is super important. I'm so glad you brought that up, um,
Thank
Sherry.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right, we'll go to Dan and then we'll go to Billy.
Feel like this is advocacy for storytelling, which is kind of the crux of our whole business. It's what lies underneath everything. And I often find that I get my words in because of storytelling. So if there's a topic, I generally have something kind of ready to go about that. Not super long, but a nice little 90-second something. And oftentimes I'll, feel like I've dominated a conversation sometimes, and I'll, be like, hey, I talk a lot, it's your turn or whatever. And people are like, oh, no, 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 it's fine. Like, because they weren't feeling every word hitting them, they were being taken somewhere. And so I think, unfortunately, what could be disappearing with this lack of speaking is storytelling, even if it's just, how was your day, and saying more than good. So very fascinating.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. Billy?
I was just going to say, and anybody that knows me, especially my family members, will just do a big eye roll over this. But there is that to Sherry's point, that the one way, and I'm not sure if her friend that is so good at engaging each day, but there is that expression of we were given one mouth and two ears. But even in meetings with clients, if you can listen as much as you talk, and maybe through good questions that are truly out of curiosity or interest and not just check the box, but that can prompt someone who might not naturally open up. And so it's listening is a big part of that conversation. And I'm curious to April about the aversion. I get it on the FaceTime, and even aversion to just phone conversations, live phone conversations, as opposed to just text me. I mean, with my own grown children. But uh, about how, this aversion we're talking right now. And to me, this is still space age. I love this ability for us to all have a meeting, see each other's faces and our reactions. But if Gen Z, their aversion to, if they've got an aversion to video conferencing like this, um, April may have done some.
Yeah, I mean they're very text into texting and to private DMing. And if they're gonna be doing video, it has to be like curated in a specific way. Like they're still in Snapchat, but it's because they can make sure it's exactly what they want before they post it, and then it disappears when it's viewed and whatnot. So they do like that kind of control because they grew up in social media where it's like I need to curate everything. We all grew up here for the most part, if I'm pretty sure, with analog. So we were able to process things differently. And so yeah, so we have to kind of like consider these things of like where they're at. But I do agree with you in terms of interest. That's the best way to bring them in, reel them in. Like absolutely.
So good. I think it's so important for kids too, because like we got our kids an analog phone. So it's a rotary dial. Like it looks like it's from, 80 years ago. It's adorable. But even we had to teach them like how do you say hello? How do you ask for someone? What do you do if somebody calls and you take a message? And then, we've had our kids say like, "All right, grandma, I want to go." And, and they just like hang out. We had to, how do you end a conversation? And so I think even
That's
just
funny.
Like it's so fun. And and like we make our kids talk to adults, like when they go check themselves at the dentist and things like that. But I think it's like what you're saying, Sherry, is like we as human beings need this, whether we're two or we're 102, right? And so I
Right.
think that, the more that we can have these real connections with people, not
Yeah.
just to sell something, but just to have those connections and build that trust, I think
Yeah.
this is such a good reminder of the importance that we're all human beings, whatever we're doing for work, whatever we're trying to do.
Yeah.
At the foundation, we're all human beings, right? Y'all really brought it today. Thank you so much for these tips. You guys took time to prepare these tips. They were so good. I feel like I've learned so much. I feel like we had such really good conversations today. So if you have any follow-ups that you want to do for a tip for next month, I would love it. I'm going to put the links back in the chat. So if you want to present next month, sogrowpr.com/submit. And definitely sign up. We'd love to have you guys come and participate in the conversation next month. I just always love every month. I look forward to this. I feel like we're all better for it. So thank you guys for being here. I will see you guys June 16th. So be sure to sign up and submit your tips, and we'll see you guys then. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.